So what is your...
Well, I don't know whether you want, Lucy, to be fair to you, I don't know whether you want to rephrase that question because that's not going to look good.
So let's talk about your approach specifically. So I might be wrong about this, so forgive me if I am. You believe that children innately know their gender from a young age. From what age, or is that wrong?
So my approach is the one it's not Helen Webberley's approach. It is the international standards approach, and that is to sit and
who's
talk.
International? Different nations have different standards. There's no one size fits all.
There's two that the world follow. There's the WPATH and there's the Endocrine Society.
Yes,
the Endocrine Society have been accused, have they?
No. Well, you can pick different experts where you want, and I can pick other ones if I wanted, and other people could. I'm not arguing. I don't have an opinion on this. I'm just saying that I've read a lot about it. Well, I don't actually. I'm not an expert in this field, but I know that though the people that one of those people that you've cited have been accused of covering up evidence, have been accused of having skin in the game. So I'm just saying nothing is really, there is a very muddy field here, and I'm saying that there is a paucity actually of data, despite citing loads and loads of reviews and this and that. We haven't had such a number of people seeking and taking treatment for such a long number of years that we have to be, as you would as a doctor, able to say that there are gaps in the data. We don't know, like with smoking and cancer. So let's just go back to your belief from what you've read about when children can decide and can know that they may want to change their gender.
So if you speak to as many parents of transgender children that I've spoken to, there are many different stories. And some will say it's a later realization. They kind of knew something was always a bit different, something was up, but they just thought, is my kid going to be gay, or what is it? And that's when the language comes in, maybe 11 or 12. And there are many parents who will say that as soon as my toddler was able to self-identify in any way, like recognize themselves in a mirror or understand that they were a separate human being to other human beings, that's that awareness of yourself, that they were very early on saying, I don't know why you're putting me in the boy queue because I'm a girl. And so I've spoken to so many parents who told me their own experiences, and obviously that's backed up by the research. And so yes, children have a very clear idea of their own identity from a very early age.
What age do you think they do?
Could you say from the age?
Yeah.
It's difficult to put that number on it, isn't it? I think, that age when a child looks in the mirror and understands that what's looking back at them is themselves, that sense of awareness. And then you put that child in amongst other children like them, and they're like, I'm not like this child.
So do you think, at what age do you think it is, what would be the lowest age that you think, and I'm not saying in every case because you'll look at each individual child, I'm sure, but what would be the youngest age you think it would be appropriate to prescribe puberty blockers?
Well, you see, you've answered your own question. Puberty starts at a different age for every single child. You don't need puberty blockers until puberty has started.
So 8,
whatever
9,
age puberty,
it could be 8 or 9. What is the youngest?
A puberty blocker blocks puberty. So the best time to give a puberty blocker to a child that's clear in their identity is when puberty starts. Yeah.
So just let's take in facts. What is the youngest age that you've treated a child pre-puberty?
I haven't personally treated children for a very long time. I haven't practiced. So I think probably 10, something like that, personally.
And just talk about your, we'll talk about puberty blockers first because we're on that subject. But there are concerns that they could cause long-term risks. I know that you might have other ideas, that it disrupts the natural alignment of mental, physical and social development. It could lead to permanent infertility, loss of sexual function, and there is a risk of bone health. And of course, we haven't had decades of work on this. But so what would be your concerns around that?
My concerns around that are that how come we've been perfectly able to prescribe the exact same puberty blocker for cisgender children for years and years for precocious puberty, for exactly the same indication to stop puberty. How come we're not worried about the risk of those effects that you talk about, which actually aren't true in those children? How come we don't worry about cisgender children? How come we're still prescribing these exact drugs for cisgender children?
Forgive me, a doctor looks at harms versus benefits. And for those children with precocious puberty, there is a clear indication with decades of research. So it's all about the risks and the benefits. If you argue that these children might change their minds, they might be confused about their sexuality, they may have same-sex desires, or they might be traumatized. We all know the case of Kira Bell, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, who's the most famous case, the detransitioners who regret what happened and the life-changing effects on the drugs. So I'm saying, this is a balance that doctors have to make. And so just to say, because we use these drugs on other people for another condition doesn't make it okay necessarily to use it on this condition. So you feel that these drugs are completely safe and there is no side effects. That is what you are saying here, that you're doing.
So you've answered your own question. You're saying that it's absolutely okay to use this for cisgender children, but not transgender children. And then the list that you reel off is the list that's not created by medics, not created by gender specialists. It's created by the public. Oh my goodness, they're going to be infertile. Oh my goodness, they might change their mind. All of those things. And what's happening as a result of that? What's happening? Please, if I may. What's happening as a result of that is that all the transgender children, and they do exist. We could have a debate as to whether transgender children exist or not, and they do exist, absolutely. But every single transgender child in this country from now on will have to go through puberty, just in case all of that list that you gave, that's not been created by medics, is in some way true. And the research backs it up that it's really important to give gender-affirming care to transgender children, and that's what's been stopped in this country. And all of those transgender children will now have to endure puberty when it could have been stopped. And then the ramifications for those children in later life is that they will have endured puberty, they will always be identifiable as trans.
Do you believe there's a reason why, or why do you think there are so many more children that want to transition, and it has grown sort of exponentially, particularly among girls, I understand? Why do you think that is? Do you think there's any societal pressures, trends? Do you think there's anything in that, or do you think this is innate in populations that we just never saw it before?
It's always been there. It's always been there. What we didn't have before, and as often happens in society, is we didn't have the language, we didn't have the understanding, we didn't have the acceptance, even though acceptance is reducing at the moment in the United Kingdom. And what's happened over the last 10 to 15 years is that we have words to describe it, we have medicines that we can use to help it, and we have support systems in place. So where in the olden days children didn't understand what was happening to them until then, they were much more mature and understanding of transgender identities. Now young people are understanding it much earlier, and that's what the rise is all about. So there's no social contagion. The social contagion has been looked at, examined, and discarded.
This video is sponsored by Saily. Saily is a brand new eSIM service app. What it does is get you a local SIM card that you can use when you're traveling, so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a text back home. They've got eSIM plans in over 160 countries and 8 regions, so pretty much wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? Well, all you've got to do is hit our link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan, you can choose the best time frame for you, and then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. Saily eSIMs only ever have to be installed once, so when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and just like that, you could be watching the GB News YouTube channel. You can be connected anywhere you go, and you don't have to deal with patchy Wi-Fi in your hotels. So get sorted for your next trip by downloading Saily using the link in the description below, and if you use our code news at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us.
So what does your clinic do? Let's talk a little bit about that. So I mean, many doctors don't agree with what you do, as you know. You operate from Spain, is that right? Is it Spain?
I spend my time in between the UK and Spain, but I don't provide medical care. I don't.
Yeah,
I'm a trans advocate.
So tell me, how do you collaborate with GPs in the UK? How do you help people who come to you really you've got your website. I think it's £265 for a monthly course of puberty blockers. £65 for information. So you are making money out of this. What do you do to help people exactly? And who do you collaborate with? Because obviously the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones are now banned in this country for children or under 18s.
Well, puberty blockers are banned in this country for in the United Kingdom for children, and cross-sex hormones are not banned in this country.
For under 18s?
No, they're not banned. No, they're not banned in this country.
Well, I know there's a court case going on about it, so perhaps that's under dispute. So what do you do? So if someone comes to your clinic for help, how can you help them? And how?
Gender GP is like a collaboration of a network. So it puts people all across the world and the United Kingdom in touch with specialists that can help them and also support their doctor if that's what their doctor wants. So it puts people in touch with counsellors, nurses, psychologists, doctors who can provide evidence-based support and care.
Do you collaborate with GPs in the UK or pharmacists in the UK to provide
for sure,
drugs?
For sure. Yeah, so for sure. And you mentioned the £265. I mean, that's the cost of a private puberty blocker. If you buy it in the chemist, that's £265. It's the cost of the medication. Very expensive.
Yeah. So if, despite the fact that the puberty blockers are banned, you are still able to help people in this way, because there will be...
Not in this country. In this country.
Not in this country, I understand.
The children, yeah.
People import. So if I was a child in this country and I wanted some puberty blockers, I could go onto your website
you can't. No.
How would I do it? What would I do?
You can't. They've been banned.
No, so you're helping people around the world, but you can't help anyone in England.
We can't help. As you know, under 18 people in the UK are not allowed to be prescribed puberty blockers, and pharmacies are not allowed to dispense them to them. Now, if they wanted to go abroad, they can do, but in the UK, nobody is allowed to help a child in the UK.
I was just going to quickly ask, what is the process you use? I understand you've been using AI. That's been a criticism. There are lots of regulations in this country about anyone receiving this care needing face-to-face approaches and also multidisciplinary teams. So lots of different types of experts to make sure that it's not trauma-based or that there is no depression or other things that could mask and make someone feel that they may be transgender. Human beings are very complicated. So I was just going to talk about the processes that you use, and you have been accused of not offering those multidisciplinary teams and of using AI to prescribe.
Well, you can't use AI to prescribe. I think every company and every forward-thinking organisation in the world at the moment is using AI to support business mechanisms. Trauma doesn't cause gender dysphoria. Depression doesn't cause gender dysphoria. And I think it's really important that we don't start labelling transgender people as people who have experienced life trauma or who have been depressed, because that completely and utterly negates the truthful honesty of gender identity. So I think we need to be really, really careful there. But I did just give you the list of people, of the collaborative supporters that we work with. So we have doctors, we have nurses, we have psychotherapists, we have counsellors, we have therapists. So anything that a person might need to support them living in this sometimes cruel world is there and available. Absolutely.
And I mean, in my work, I've spoken to a number of detransitioners, including Kira Bell, who really regret what happened, and they have now life-changing bodily, life-changing things on their bodies. Sort of, Kira's got sexual dysfunction, a deep voice. She really believed as a teenager this is what she wanted to do, and before. Yeah. So how do you cope with the fact that some people may end up regretting and that some of these things are irreversible?
I think, again, the United Kingdom is so against supporting trans people that little list that you just reeled off that Kira Bell has, so sexual dysfunction, depression, a deep voice, all of that will be happening to trans people at the moment. And because they are being denied care. But nobody seems to care about that. Nobody seems to care that every single transgender child going through puberty at the moment who's trans feminine will end up with a deep voice. But no one seems to care about that one. Do you know what I mean? It's like we're also caught up in the one cisgender child, if Kira Bell is cisgender, that had ended up with a deep voice. We don't seem to care one tiny bit about all of the transgender people who will end up with a deep voice, and that really hurts. It really, really hurts them. But no one's caring about those. And every reporter I've spoken to says I've spoken to a detransitioner, and all I want to say is, please go and speak to 100 trans people. Hear it from them, because gender dysphoria really, really hurts.
I understand completely what you're saying, but isn't the job of a doctor to first do no harm? If you have a risk that someone, just one person, will end up suicidal, depressed because the wrong medication was given, then you're intervening on someone. I know that there are people with genuine gender dysphoria who want to transition, but isn't your job to say, I can do no harm because I don't know whether you're going to change your mind? As a doctor, I can't do you harm. Is that not your role?
Well, if you look at the prevention of future deaths that's published by the Coroner's Office, there's a whole list on there of people who have committed suicide, and the NHS themselves have been implicated in matters of concern. So they have had to give evidence because they didn't provide care. So yes, do no harm, but sometimes doing no harm. Sometimes doing no harm means treating people. Suicide is tragic. Suicide is complicated and tragic. Of course it is.
It's complicated and tragic, but there are also people who want to take their own lives because of a wrong decision, because of the wrong medication. There is not good evidence. I'm sure you will agree, not good evidence.
I can give you the evidence. Lucy, I really don't want to go there because there's extremely good... It's reported
the CAS review, for example.
It's reported on the HM Court's website. I'll send you the links.
I can send you other evidence.
How many suicides do we want on that list where it says that the NHS is a concern because of the delays in care of gender affirming care? Well, there's a 13-year-old boy on there.
Forgive me.
Didn't get access to NHS care.
We don't know how many. The evidence just isn't there. We haven't got good quality evidence on this. And the CAS review and subsequent reviews have shown that removing the puberty blocker prescriptions have not led to an increase in suicides. It is muddy. It's not clear cut. But anyway, let's move on. There has been a Supreme Court judgment about trans men and trans women being able to how they function in society. And I know you've had very strong views on that and their place in society. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. So what is your...
Well, I don't know whether you want, Lucy, to be fair to you, I don't know whether you want to rephrase that question because that's not going to look good. But this Supreme High Court was nothing to do with trans women and trans men's place in society.
Well, it's whether they... Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's whether they...
Well, no, you go ahead. You tell me. I know you've been tweeting things about it very, and I just didn't want to get too controversial. But you're very, very moved by that yesterday.
The Supreme Court were asked to decide what the definition really was in the Equality Act, because the Equality Act protects sex and gender. And people were like, well, what's sex and what's gender? Are they the same? Are they different? So the Supreme Court was asked simply to clarify what they meant by sex in the Equality Act. And they also said very clearly that transgender women are women and they can ask for protection under the Equality Act as women. So I know that the newspapers have misinterpreted it. I know that the transphobic people are waving their flags. This is not to do with negating the identity of trans women whatsoever, and certainly trans men weren't mentioned.
No. Absolutely not, and they are still protected. But I thought that you had concerns
They're protected
about
as
that.
Yes,
yes, I completely and should not be discriminated about. That wasn't about. It was, but you have been tweeting and expressing views about that. Are you totally happy with that judgment yesterday, or do you have concerns?
I think it's difficult because it's legal language, and sometimes when they write the law in a difficult to understand way, they didn't get it quite right, and it's caused confusion, and it's allowed transphobia in our country, which is a real shame. They did the same with the maternity law for trans people, and it's difficult to undo those words. And some people are saying that the court only listened to one side of the story, but that's for other people, not me, to examine and decide. But it is sad. It's sad because of the UK's interpretation of the words yesterday, and everyone's saying that means trans women are not women, and it's just not what the Supreme Court said or meant at all.
Well, what would be your view? Would you sympathise with people that say, look, we've got 98% of sexual offences prosecutions for sexual offences are by men. We are concerned that men or natal males are transitioning in order to get access to children or women and to go into female spaces, children's spaces, and perpetrate abuse, because that
I just think
there
it's
are
just
studies
such a
having
it's just no studies, no evidence. Absolute nonsense. In the same way that we used to think that don't mention gay people in front of children because, oh my goodness, don't sit next to a gay person on the bus. Oh my goodness. We used to say all of this about gay people, and now they're trotting out the same stuff about trans people. It's absolutely abhorrently disgusting stuff that people are saying, and it's absolutely not true. And to discriminate against trans women just because they have a penis and because they might attack a child is just abhorrent.
So there are studies, I'm citing mine, that show that trans women are 5 times more likely than men to commit offences. I don't know. There'll be other studies. There'll be studies showing it's higher or lower, but we can debate the data as long as we like. Do you not think that there is any risk? Do you not feel that there is something to be said for women that are very, very keen to protect the space of women, because men are inherently, generally, more dangerous in terms of committing sexual offences than women?
I think you've got to be really careful about what we're saying here. We're saying things like men are more dangerous than women.
Well,
I mean, I think we've got to be really careful that we are not discriminating on a sex basis. We're not discriminating on a gender basis. We need to protect society from bad people, and bad people could be Black people, gay people, trans people, straight people, white people, cisgender people. We don't protect people against a particular group. We protect people against bad people. And as soon as we start saying, oh, well, there might be more of those bad people because of their colour or their race or their religion or what have you, we get into very, very sticky ground. And I think we need to be careful.
Well, there. It wasn't really what I was saying. I was saying that there's good evidence, and there are definitely anecdotal examples where this is used as a way to access women and children. And I wondered if you had any sympathy for people that would be concerned about that.
Zero sympathy of creating policy that excludes transgender people in case they are in some way risky or dangerous to women and children. I have zero sympathy with discrimination against a protected characteristic on any of those grounds.
So it is okay for a man to put on a wig, say, I identify as a woman, and go to I don't think a loo is a necessarily good example, but to go into any female space, to go into a refuge for women for domestic abuse. You just don't have any issues with any of it. You think that is...
You don't... I will not allow you to say to me that I think it's okay for a man to put on a wig, pretend to be a woman and go and hurt somebody.
Not
Absolutely
pretend to be a woman. say, I identify as a woman. If they identify as a woman, you just don't see that there could be an issue there. There could be problems.
I think that we need to have safe spaces for people. And those people who need a safe space could be female, and they can be male, and they could be trans, and they could be gay. But I think the fact that what we're doing in the United Kingdom, again, is protecting these weak, feeble women who must be protected from these men who might hurt them. We should have left that long ago. We should have left that long ago, when we were fighting for the right to be considered equal, which we fought very, very hard for.
I was going to ask about what role parents made in the decision-making process. Do you feel that there is an important, that parents need to be involved in any decision-making process for children who want to transition?
I think that parents have a really, really important role for any child. They are the first port of call for a child who's experiencing anything, whether that's joy, sadness, or happiness. I think if a child going through any identity difficulties or medical difficulties, to have a supportive parent there is going to give the best outcome by far. Unfortunately, not all parents are supportive, as we know.
So you would not necessarily, if that was the case, you would not necessarily involve them in any decision-making process? In the decision making,
you do that thing where if she says that, we'll say, okay, therefore. No, it's fine, but the parents aren't needed. Not every child is fortunate enough to have the support of their parents. But luckily in the United Kingdom, that doesn't mean that they don't get to access medical care. And that's across the board, not just transgender care. We've seen it with contraception, with Gillick. We've seen it with abortion. We've seen it in children making their own decisions, with Jehovah's Witnesses, for example. So there are many, many situations where sometimes the parents and the child disagree. And that doesn't mean that the child doesn't get to have an opinion on their care. And again, I'm not going to discriminate against trans children. They get the same treatment as cisgender children. And minority consent in the UK is a thing, thank goodness.
And what age do you think a child is Gillick competent? What age do you think they are capable of making a decision about something that could impact their life?
Well, again, if you look at the law, Gillick and Fraser guideline didn't put an age on it. They put the ability to understand information and give consent to that stage of the treatment. And not forgetting that, for example, and I know there's your example of the 8-year-old going through puberty. It's not a one-off decision. It's not like removing a body part for cancer. This is we could give you this injection, which will last for 3 months, and then we can see again whether you want to do that again in 3 months' time. Medical consent is an ongoing, long-term, ever-evolving process.
And do you have, how integral is sort of mental health evaluations in your treatment or in your protocol for children experiencing gender dysphoria?
Well, the diagnosis is gender incongruence. Gender dysphoria is the distress because of gender incongruence, and gender dysphoria happens when people are denied healthcare, and that's what it exists. Transgender people aren't innately mentally unwell. They're not born with depression or sadness or anxiety, but the difficulties that transgender people face in medicine, in healthcare, and in society do cause mental health problems. And I've already mentioned, there is a team of counsellors and psychotherapists, nurses, doctors, all prepared to help if mental health is an issue. And it's really important.
So it's not a given that these team or any members of these team will come in to help, but it's only something you would do if you suspect there may be mental health problems as well. But if a child...
If you put somebody who hasn't got mental illness in front of a counsellor and say, right, you've got an hour, then there isn't much to talk about. If you've got somebody who has got difficulties and you say, would you like to speak to someone about it, then you can get real benefit. But I think what you're asking is, should we be doing psychological evaluations to make sure that this person hasn't got some hidden trauma or mental illness that you mentioned before? And actually, the psychological evaluation is not about gender identity. It's about how are you managing, how are you coping, how is life treating you with your gender incongruence.
Right. So you wouldn't question it. You would say, you have gender incongruence. I'm not going to question you. This is going to be a given.
Where is the bit I said there was no questions?
I didn't know. Well, I thought that's what you were saying. I thought you would only step in the mental health support if you felt there was a mental health problem. But
if you have a mental health problem, then you have mental health practitioners.
Let's be clear.
But if you want medical treatment, you have doctors and nurses. So I'm like, so you don't. But if you don't have a medical, if you don't have a medical problem, you don't need a doctor. If you don't have a mental health problem, you don't need a psychologist.
Yeah. So what you're saying is this is a problem of gender incongruence that needs treating. That's it. You're separating that from any mental ill health because you don't believe that there's necessarily a link. It's not an illness.
There is definitely a link. There's definitely a link, but the link is not you're not transgender because you are mentally ill. The mental ill health is caused by the fact that your gender identity causes issues in today's society.
And what evidence do you have to support the safety of the treatments provided by your clinic?
Well, the Endocrine Society guidelines are very clear on the treatment. The Pediatric American Association are very clear on the treatment protocols. The Australian guidelines for children are very clear on the protocol, and so is the WPATH. There are very, very good international peer-reviewed evidence-based publications which tell you exactly tell doctors exactly what to do and when to do it, and it's completely peer-reviewed and evidence-based.
So you feel that what Wes Streeting has done, what the Health Secretary has done, and what Hilary Cass's review has done, which obviously took a lot of years, is completely out of step with what you believe is the right approach for this?
Well, it was actually Victoria Atkins that wasn't Wes Streeting. I'm not going to blame him. He just carried on a legacy. He carried on a legacy. Yeah. But yes, it is completely out of sorts with the gender experts' opinion, the medical experts across the world, and the United Kingdom, which is usually so forward-thinking, is going to come a real cropper in the future when there are cases against it for totally going against proper medical evidence and instead relying on Dr. Cass and her unnamed colleagues who have completely negated the expert evidence of medics across the world.
Although there are cases going on the other way right now. But is there anything else you want to cover? I mean, presumably you're going to carry on with your work. Have you got plans? How will you help people in the UK? Because there's nothing much you can do for them, you're saying at the moment.
There's nothing you can do. We've got to pick up the pieces. We've got to, hope that the suicide rate doesn't increase because, the evidence for suicide is there. It's in our court listings and the NHS is implicated. There's a 13-year-old boy in that list of suicides. And that's just tragic. How can you
evidence for suicide is there from people who've wrongly we don't. The evidence is the Cass didn't find that evidence, and now we've made this move.
You don't have to be Cass to find it. You just have to go on the website.
There hasn't been an increase in suicide. But anyway, let's not talk about suicide. I think we probably covered everything. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching, and please do subscribe to GBN Originals for more.